Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am PJ with a messy beard. I guess before we get started, because I just saw these, eh, eh. You know what these are? Can you see that? Can you see that? It didn't snap off like I thought it would. Whoop. This is staghorn sumac, and these berries right here, which should be reddish, are a natural source of vitamin C. These are past their prime. You don't eat them, you suck on them. And the best way to gather these, and the way the Native Americans would gather them, is in the summertime. Once they they start out like green, and then they turn red, and they get like a sap on them. That's when you snip them, cut them, store them, dry them out, and that's when they have the max amount of vitamin C. You can actually make lemonade out of them. You just take a whole bunch of these seeds, put them in some water, shake it up, let it soak, and it tastes like lemonade, and it's vitamin C. So, but you don't eat them. You just kind of suck on them and spit them out. And there's still some tartness in these, but they've been rained on a lot, stuff like that. We actually planted these. I brought these here from another place, so. All right, before we get started, I want to say that I've dealt with refugees, honest to God refugees, been in refugee camps. It's a horrible existence. You're totally at the whim of others. You have very little security. You have no access to resources other than what is provided. And it's just a hard scrabble, not a good life. You don't want to be a refugee. Don't want to live like a refugee. I know, there's a reason I'm not a singer. So don't mistake, I wish this would quit going off. My texts keep coming in hot and heavy. You don't want to be a refugee, so don't take anything that I say to mean, yeah, this is a good idea. But PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, heck, half of you all, not half of y'all, a large number of y'all tell me where I live is my bug out location, despite my efforts to educate you. Fine, whatever, you do you, boo. You have to have a plan for when that doesn't work. And the best plan for when your bug out location or your retreat does not work is to have another one to go to. Have another setup to go to. But somewhere down that line of primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, you're just going to have to take what you have and go and hope to live by your wits and do the best you can. Let me just say one more time, that should never be plan A or B or even C. You should have better plans than that, but that doesn't negate the fact that you should have a, oh shit, plan, right? They're flying fighters over today. So the concept of the inch bag, which is not even what I'm going to talk about. The inch bag is the I'm never coming home bag. And the theory is, and I'm building one, I want to do a book on it. The theory is with this bag and this bag alone, this rucksack that I can carry, I can go off into yon wilderness and live indefinitely with just what's in this bag. Okay. I think it's not a horrible idea to have an inch bag. Well, it's the same as a bug out bag. No, it's not. A bug out bag is a bag typically designed to support you while you get from where you are to where you're going. That's all it is. It's just to get you there. It's not to necessarily set traps and fish and build a log cabin. You ain't got time for that. Those books by A. American, I mean, I've seen him in interviews. He seems like a nice guy, but come on, man. You need to get from point A to point B. That's all you want to do. Walk, sleep, eat, walk. That's it. But if it's like, hey, I'm running off into the wilderness for a variety of reasons, or I'm running off to wherever, I need to be able to survive with just what I have. Is that not very similar, but on a larger scale, similar to what happened with the pioneers in America who moved west in the Conestoga wagons. They took everything they thought they would need to start a new life in a basically back of a pickup sized situation and moved out and had to survive on the way and had to survive once they got there. It's very similar. It's very similar to the experience of the Boers, the Voortrekkers in South Africa, when they said, we're done with the system. Boy, those people coup-himped. If you haven't studied that, you should look at that. They said, we're not dealing with this British government. We're just withdrawing and preparing. And they just pulled back. Didn't end up working out for them, but in the short term, medium term, it did. And so you now have to pack up, and this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about your Conestoga wagon. You've got to leave. You can't stay here. If you stay here, you're going to die. If you leave, you could live another 50 years. You know, who knows? So you got to go. And I'm telling you this, for all those of you who are too intellectually lazy, or you don't want to contemplate the unthinkable, or you're just like, that's too uncomfortable for me to think about, so I'll just stay here and die. No, you won't. No, you won't. When push comes to shove, you're going to flee. Except you're going to be totally unprepared because you didn't listen to me, because you were afraid to contemplate the unthinkable. I should stand over there by the woodshed while I'm doing this. So here's what I'd like you to consider. And you can start out, okay, this is my way, you do it your way. I like starting out with pen and paper, literally pen and paper, because I'm old school. I'm an analog dude in a digital world. But I like to make a list of everything I think I can fit in my vehicle. Now, you have a vehicle. If you and your most Americans have more than one car, pickup, whatever. Many Americans have 3 or 4 when you count the teenagers' cars. If you are in a situation where you have a family unit and you have more than one vehicle, you should plan on taking them all, because you can carry more stuff. And then you should have, and I talk about this in my book a little bit, you should have a bump plan so that if Ashley's, 98 Subaru finally gives up the ghost, what do we take out of her car that's vitally important and put in another car? And then what do we take out of that car to make room for Ashley's bug out bag? Whatever. You should think about that. But it's easier if you just start with one. And I haven't done this for a while. I'm actually going to do this. I have a pickup truck that I am in the process of fixing up. It's an old pickup truck. And my goal is to make it brand new mechanically. I don't care what it looks like. I don't. I just want it to function. I want to be able to get in that thing and drive to Alaska and then come back and not even worry about it. And so I'm working on that. As I get money, I put it into it and have things fixed or replaced or, whatever. I'm not turning it into an overlander adventure bug out vehicle extreme with all the cool gewgaws. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about if I had to flee and me and my wife are in that pickup, what would, and I don't know where I'm going because I planned badly or just stuff happened, what would I take? And I might have, in my concept, society has totally collapsed because it's more fun to plan that way. It's just total chaos out there. In other words, your credit card is not important. Your laptop is not important, probably. I could make an argument for the data that you have on your laptop and your little solar generator that I advertise all the time, and you have stuff on sticks or whatever that you can, okay, maybe. But EMP, dude, well then your truck won't work. Mine will. Work with me here. What would you take? If you had to, this is all I can take. I'll give you another example. When I first met my now son-in-law, we had a deal back then that with a lot of screening and whatever, people could visit Shofar Mountain. And so he contacted me via email and we did the dance. And then finally he came to meet us and for a week. Come hang out for a week, camp with us, see what we do, that kind of thing. That was the deal then. We don't do that anymore. And so we met him. And we did our security protocols with him. And then finally I'm like, well, where's your vehicle? And he goes, it's that pickup right there. And he had a pickup truck. I don't remember what kind it was back then, a Toyota or something. It had a motorbike in it, like in the bed of the pickup truck. He's coming for a week. So I thought. And then everything just packed. That thing was packed. I said, "Is that all your stuff?" He said, "Yep." I said, "What?" He goes, "I'm moving here." He meant the Ozarks. He goes, "I'm going to stay here a week, and then, I'm moving here. The father told me to." Lo, these many years later, he's my son-in-law, in whom I'm well pleased. But he had everything. But that's a different thing, right? It's modern society. What you need while the society's functioning is different from what you need when society's not functioning and you're going to be on your own. Remember how I tell y'all all the time, bushcrafting is a good hobby to get into? You should own the basic, and dare I say, intermediate bushcrafting skills. You should, and you don't own them by watching them on YouTube only. You have to go do them under varying conditions. But what would you have? I talked about this a couple years ago because Lon Simpson sent me, or I think it was Lon. Could have been somebody else. I know, I'm terrible. Sorry. I'm pretty sure it was Lon. But maybe again somebody else. If it was you, please raise your hand. I'll give you thanks again. But anyway, the old Boy Scout cook set. I now have 2 of them. I may have bought one. I have 2 of them, and it's like all these nesting pots and pans and plates and stuff, and it's just ready to build your little campfire, set that up, and start cooking grub. That might be a good thing. If you watch Alone, those people, they get pretty good people on the show Alone, where basically you go live on your own with 10 items you can pick, and the one who lasts the longest gets the $1 million prize or something. And they're lasting over 60 days. They're lasting 90 to 100 days. And they always start it right before winter because they don't want the thing to go forever. And so winter comes and when the second to last person quits and somebody wins. But they're going pretty good with just 10 things. Those are 10 things you might want to consider for your Conestoga wagon. A means to secure a large game, something to cook in, a form of shelter other than the cab of your pickup truck, whether that's a tarp or a good tent or whatever, fire starting forever. I think big ferro rods. I'm thinking, to my mind, when you're designing your I'm never coming home vehicle loadout, there's no place in it other than maybe an empty cubicle to be filled as needed for perishables, because we're talking long-term gonna survive. And so you don't need 6 cases of MREs because you're never coming home. What are you doing when those 6 cases run out? I'm thinking you need like traps and snares and fishing implements and a rifle, a 30 caliber rifle and a couple boxes of shells, a bow, whatever. Hardcore clothing. I tried one time. I didn't get satisfying for me answers from y'all. I said, if you had to pick one set of clothing to go through the apocalypse in, what would you pick? And everybody's like, pretty much what I have now. But when they described it, it wasn't the best clothing you could buy. And by best, I'm not talking about like the European bushcrafter pants that cost $400 with the patches on them and stuff. I'm just, I just wear my Dickies. Well, there's better jeans that last longer than Dickies. Carhartt logging pants comes to mind, and I don't like Carhartt. I don't support them anymore. But they're better pants. They'll last longer. Things like that. And again, now this is where people add in, I like Barron, I like this, I'm just saying, if you're thinking about, I'm never coming home, this is what I have for the end of all time, what would you take? Here's why. If you have that thought process, you've already gone through that thought process, if you've actually packed your rig, your car, your truck, your whatever, man, it'll save you a lot of time if the 44th Mongolian horde is 2 hours out and you gotta go. I just watched a show on, it left me wanting more. I watched a show, not in a great way, it was on Amazon, I think, called Resistance. And it was about if D-Day had failed and the Germans invaded England, that was the scenario. The Germans have invaded England, D-Day failed, and then there's a resistance. They could have done a lot better job. But it's still, interested me, because at one point, all the men, before the Germans get there, all the men disappear into the hills and to conduct resistance activities. And I found myself wondering, if you know you're going out to be a guerrilla fighter for the rest of the time, just you and your 3 mates, you know, like the auxiliary that they set up in England back then, what clothes would you wear? What boots would you wear? What socks would you take? You know, that kind of thing. So the I'm never coming home bag, you should give that some thought. Again, you're never coming home. Having expendables in there isn't really helping you. You need to think long-term stuff. You ever read that book, Tunnel in the Sky? Man, I love that book. I read that book first at an impressionable age, about 8th grade, and then I've read it several times since then. And the deal was, and then I'll get off, the deal was, it was a wilderness survival class set in the future. Kind of like a college level class, but they said it was high school. And the final test was, you have to prepare yourself and your kit to go live on this uninhabited planet for like 4 or 5 days or a week or something. And then they put them in like a little time warp thing and pew, blast them to a new undiscovered planet. And they just kind of end up, and they got to hang out for a week. Well, the machine breaks after they send all the students to this land that's kind of like Africa. And, but like they'll put one student here and one student 5 miles away, and neither one of them knows that the other one's there. You know, so they're just scattered. You're just like alone, basically in the African plains. And, the machine breaks and they don't come get them again for like a year or so. So they're on their own. So if they had known that I was going to have to be here a year, would they have taken different things? And that's what I'm telling you. Think about that. And then maybe start putting together a kit, first on paper and then play with it. And then, you know, test yourself. Go out and say, okay, well, I would build a shelter like this for a long-term shelter. All right, well, then go build one. You can build it in a day, set it up, sleep in it that night, have a cool camp out, and take it down and come home. You could do that. I would build a long-term cooking fire like this, kind of like a rocket stove, so I wouldn't have to use as much fuel. Okay, it's a good idea. Go build one. That kind of thing. It can take you in a long way. We were talking about hobbies and what you do for fun. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to go on the 2-week expedition. You can go do the couple hours on a weekend where you go do a thing, a component of the whole. And then that'll probably refine what you think you want. Like long-term situation, rope becomes pretty valuable. Sharpening gear to keep your implements sharp, whatever implements you bring. If you bring a saw, you're going to need files. If you bring an axe, you're going to need a file and a stone. If you bring a knife, you're going to need a stone, you know, sharpener or whatever. That needs to be part of your long-term I'm never coming home kit. If you're carrying it, weight's an issue. If you're not, if you're carrying it in a truck, weight is somewhat of an issue, but size becomes an issue, right? Something to think about. I'm interested. Some of you have thought about this. Some of you are ahead of me on this. I am interested in your personal comments, thoughts, recommendations, ideas. All right. Beautiful day. I will see you out there.